Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Side Projects. On this one today, covering something surprisingly serious. The Nobel Prize ignored the invisible women of science, so let's just jump into it, shall we? It's a sad fact that women are hugely underrepresented when it comes to the highest levels in the world of science. The Nobel Prize website states that 57 individual women have been awarded the Nobel Prize since 1901. However, only 23 of these were in the science and medical fields. Men have won a lot more, like 900 more. So why is this? Maybe women are just at science. Not really. There were some schools not teaching science to girls in the UK, for example, until well into the latter half of the 20th century. It's tough to get your foot in the door when the door's locked from the inside. And what of those early female pioneers? Did they just hang on to men's lab coattails or make the tea? Again, no. They were busy making contributions and discoveries of their own, but many times they were just not given credit. There's a name for this. It's called the MATILDA effect, and no, it doesn't mean you can suddenly levitate bits of chalk with the power of your eyeballs, though that would be pretty cool. It's named after American suffragist and activist Matilda JOSLYN GAGE, and it basically refers to when a female scientist's achievements are overlooked by, or even attributed to, their male colleagues. So let's take a look at just a few of the women who made it through to become real-life scientists, but for whatever reason, they didn't quite get the recognition they deserved. Whatever reason here being, well, sexism. Nettie Stevens was born in 1861, a time when women were not encouraged to pursue much in the way of higher education. Nevertheless, it became pretty clear that she was a big brain, and she supported herself as a teacher while saving up to study science at university. She made it to Stanford at the age of 35 and studied for a BA and then a master's in biology. During this time, she specialized in the microscopic study of cell and organism anatomy, and in 1903, at the age of 42, she completed a PhD thesis at Bryn Mawr College, where the head of biology was one Thomas Hunt Morgan. At the beginning of the 20th century, scientists hadn't yet worked out how the gender of offspring was determined, and it was thought that environmental and external factors played the biggest part. Through her research on aphids in 1904, Stevens theorized that sex is determined in the egg, but she couldn't confirm how. By 1905, she had concluded correctly that chromosomes determined sex and had identified the now familiar XX as female and XY as male, although these letters were not given at the time. Unfortunately for Stevens, this theory was also arrived at by another scientist, Edmund Wilson. Because of his larger reputation and the fact that he was a dude, his name overshadowed hers in work going forward, despite the fact that his research had not been as thorough. Nettie Stevens died in 1912 at the age of 50. Now remember Thomas Hunt Morgan from Bryn Mawr College? Well, building on research by Stevens and even confirming in textbooks that she made the link to chromosome sex determination without actually officially crediting her, Morgan won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1933 for his discoveries concerning the role played by the chromosome in heredity. Stevens might have got the last laugh though, as in 2016 she finally hit the big time when she was immortalized as a Google Doodle. With a whopping 48 scientific Nobel Prize nominations and 0 wins is Austrian physicist Lise Meitner. Born in 1878, she was only the second woman in the world to have a doctorate in physics and was the first ever female professor of physics in Germany, where she worked at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute and frequently collaborated with chemist Otto Hahn. As the Nazis started gaining ground in the 1930s, Meitner, a Jew, left Germany for Sweden in 1938. She continued to work with Hahn remotely, and after he conducted an experiment where barium was seemingly produced after uranium was hit with neutrons, he wrote to her asking for help in explaining what had happened. Meitner and her colleague and nephew, Otto Frisch, ultimately discovered that the uranium itself was breaking apart and that the nuclei of atoms can be split. This was nuclear fission, the foundation for the atomic bomb, and a term Frisch came up with in a paper published in February 1939, naming both him and Meitner in it. Otto Hahn, however, published his findings without mentioning Meitner at all, despite having worked together for decades and without whose input he would have had no paper to publish. In 1944, although it wasn't actually awarded until 1945, Otto Hahn received the Nobel in chemistry for his discovery of the fission of heavy nuclei. There have been many reasons given for Meitner's exclusion, including that the panel had not realized the weight of her contributions after she left Germany and that Hahn had left her name off his research due to wartime sensitivities, but it definitely came across as a snub rather than a genuine mistake at the time. Meitner went on to receive many other awards, and the element MEITNERIUM was named after her in 1997, but as she died in 1968, it didn't mean that much to her. As a Chinese woman in 1940s America, Xian Xiong Wu had more than one obstacle to overcome when it came to getting recognition for her work. A brilliant physicist, she worked on the development of nuclear weapons as part of the Manhattan Project by separating uranium into 2 different isotopes and working on improving methods of radiation detection. After the war, Wu became an expert on beta decay, confirming Enrico Fermi's formerly disproved theory of electron behavior by proving that previous researchers had made errors and inconsistencies in their experiments. In 1956, she was approached by theoretical physicists Sung Dao Li, who she already knew, and Chen Ning Yang. They wanted to test the law of parity, which is basically what it sounds like, and stated that identical mirror image systems must behave in the same way. Because of her work with beta decay, Wu devised and carried out an experiment to test this using cobalt-60 atoms, and lo and behold, the 2 systems did not react identically. At first, the physics community refused to accept the results, but by 1957 it was confirmed that the conservation of parity was not a given in all circumstances. For, and I quote, "their penetrating investigation of the so-called parity laws, which has led to important discoveries regarding the elementary particles," Li and Yang received the 1957 Nobel for Physics. And Wu, who had created and actually done the experiment that proved their theory, nary a mention. Definitely no parity being achieved there. Microbial biologist Esther Lederberg was crucial to our current understanding of bacteria and microbial genetics. Having graduated with a bachelor's degree in genetics by the age of 20, she went on to marry fellow biologist Joshua Lederberg in 1946 and finished her PhD 2 years later at the age of 28. In 1951, she discovered the LAMBDA bacteriophage, a virus that infects bacteria. It was easy to produce cultures of this phage, and it is still a mainstay research tool for microbiologists and geneticists today. Working as a team, the Lederbergs, Esther and her husband Joshua, developed replica plating, which was a reliable way of moving bacteria from one petri dish to another without changing the configuration or basically messing it up. This had been an issue for years prior to the Lederbergs coming up with and using a sterilized velveteen fabric to pick up and stamp the colonies onto the new plates. Colleagues of the Lederbergs at the time have confirmed that it was Esther who came up with the fabric to use and the method to sterilize it. Contemporary sources also have claimed that Joshua was not a particularly gifted or thorough researcher, but that Esther was. While it cannot be definitively said who was responsible for what, there is no doubt that this was a team effort, with both Lederbergs contributing to the process. They also worked together on specialized transduction to study bacterial resistance to antibiotics using Esther's previously discovered lambda phage. While winning other awards for her work, how did the 1958 Nobel panel recognize Esther? Well, it just didn't. Joshua Lederberg received the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine for his discoveries concerning genetic recombination and the reorganization of the genetic material of bacteria. There was no mention of his research partner, who was also his wife. Unsurprisingly, the couple divorced in 1966. In 1967, 24-year-old postgrad student Susan JOSLYN Bell Burnell, then known as JOSLYN Bell, was looking at readings provided by the Interplanetary Scintillation Array, or IPS array. This was, and still is, a radio telescope originally constructed to survey the sky at a high resolution to study random fluctuations in radio waves. Among the group who had set this telescope up were Sir Martin Ryle, Anthony Hewish, and the aforementioned JOSLYN Bell. In 1967, Bell was looking through readings taken from 3 months previously and noticed a regularly pulsing signal in the data. It had taken so long to find it as all the paper data was reviewed by hand, and she was sometimes checking up to 96 feet, that's 29 meters of paper a night. Her supervisor, Anthony Hewish, thought this must be a man-made signal that was interfering with their data, and even shut Bell out of meetings that he had with Martin Ryle about their research. research, Bell persisted in researching the signal, which was originally known as LGM-1, short for Little Green Man 1, as a nod to a potentially alien origin, and after a couple more years of team research, it was discovered that the pulsing signal was not man-made and was, in fact, coming from a neutron star. Now known as pulsars, they have been very useful to astronomers for things like calculating time and distance in space. At the time of the discovery, Bell's male counterparts were interviewed about the science side of things, and she'd be asked riveting questions about her love life. So, what happened to JOSLYN Bell Burnell and her spotting of and persistence in pursuing the pulsar signal? Well, in 1974, Martin Rall and Anthony Hewish were awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics, with Hewish's contribution stated as his decisive role in the discovery of pulsars. Bell Burnell was not credited or mentioned, and while she has since said that as a mere research student at the time she felt she didn't deserve the prize, most of the science community believes that she was hard done by. If you were expecting to hear Rosalind Franklin's name on this list, well, here it is. Probably one of the better-known snubbies, it was she who discovered the now instantly recognizable double helix structure of DNA. She died a few years before Crick, Watson, and Wilkins received their Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine in 1962, so, like Nettie Stevens, she would not have actually been eligible, as Nobel Prizes are not awarded posthumously. The fact that her image of the structure of DNA was taken by Maurice Wilkins and shared without her knowledge, and she barely received a passing mention for it at the time, is just one more example of the Matilda effect in full swing. At least now we're able to look back and give credit to these women for the discoveries they made, but for a lot of them, it's just too little, too late. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.